Hey everyone, it's Dave from Fantasy Basketball Analyzer. I want to do a little intro on this video because it's a little different than the weekly videos I've been doing a lot of. I bring my buddy Shad and we talk about how we constructed our DraftKings lineups for Wednesday, December 18th. We've been recording one almost weekly, but we've been just experiencing some technical issues. But this time, I went ahead, I turned on the internet, and everything worked. So I wanted to do a little pre-roll to explain that the next part's going to be kind of more like a podcast we're posting on YouTube of sorts. Like it's going to be a still image, and I'm going to put some graphics up there with some stats, but it's more of like intended for kind of having the window in the background while you're building your DraftKings lineup as we talk about matchups, team-wise, player-wise, and what we were thinking, so that you can kind of sit in on the conversation. It's as if you can build your own lineup with buddies without having to give away your secrets to anyone you might be going against head to head. We're giving away our secrets or our thoughts. And then to kind of kick off that thought process, I want to rattle off some names we didn't discuss that you might be interested in that I think could be some good value plays. To kind of be your own building blocks so you're not just listening to us talk and trying to clone it. Some of them for you to start with and kind of tinker with as we go. So if you're looking for some discounts, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson at $3K. Seems like a pretty good deal. Derek Favors, Shad's actually going to talk about when we talk about the lineup. So, spoiler alert. If you're looking for some cheaper big men, Larry Nance Jr. is only $4K for the Clippers, for the Cavs. And Thompson's at 5.9. It's not that cheap, but I think there's a good chance of the matchup here. I like Kobe White as kind of a flyer. So you'll hear that I'm all over that Bulls-Wizards game. But Kobe White at 4.1 has a real boom-bust potential. So if you're playing in a head-to-head or 50-50 matchup, I don't really love Kobe White. But if you're playing one of those large prize pools, he seems like a really good guy to target. At 4.1, it gives you a little more flexibility to get some of those higher guys. And then a pretty big NBA player who doesn't have a huge salary hit, CJ McCollum didn't come up in either of our lineups at 6.9. I kind of think we overlooked it a little bit. We talked about that game, but you can get some real points there. And for someone under 7,000, he's just about in that middle of the road price, like 6,300 is about middle for your lineup. So if you can get a real star for 69, I'm a little disappointed that neither of us pointed that out in the thing. So there's some building blocks. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, CJ, maybe Kobe White if you want a flyer. Somewhere to kind of get you started as Shad and I go through, starting reading point guards all the way through. And then once this comes up, you're going to see we've got all the matchups home and away, strength of schedule, things we usually look for in our weekly matchups where we talk about the pace of play versus the defense, the averages. Except with DFS, sometimes we add a little extra emphasis of if you've got a slower team playing up in pace of play, there's the advantage that those guys are going to kind of beat their average stats. If you're looking at their average stats and they're playing a little bit faster, even the other side just playing faster, going through more possessions, gives them more opportunity for shots, rebounds, etc. So we'll have that posted throughout the still image as we're talking through. Gives you a reference point as you're kind of building your own lineup. And good luck out there. Hope you win some money tonight. Without further ado, let's bring in Shad and get to tonight's lineup conversation. Hey, Shad, thanks for joining. We are recording December 17th for the Wednesday, December 18th games. We've got a slate of 9 games to choose from, and we're using DraftKings as per usual, although I say that as per usual and realize that many people haven't heard our recordings that we keep doing, so anyway, how's it going with you?
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks of testing, and no, it's going good. This week was a little bit tough, but I was able to get that lineup going.
Why don't you go ahead and lead us off? Who's
Okay.
at the 1 for you? Anyone else you may have considered?
At the 1, I went with Kemba Walker. Just kind of looking at him the last time he played against Dallas, he put up 42 fantasy points. He's at 7,400, so pretty good value there. He's 2 games ago against Indiana, he put up 64.8. My only concern would be who they end up starting that game, because Rick Carlisle kind of likes switching up his lineups? Do they put DeLon Wright, who's a better defensive player, against him, or do they end up like starting Jalen Brunson against him? At that point, I feel like Kemba would have the better edge against Jalen, and so just kind of looking at it. We've got, even the last game he had 46 fantasy points. So I think he's kind of coming off that injury, really getting back into the kind of the rhythm of things. And like I mentioned, last time they played against Dallas, he actually put up 47 fantasy points. So, if I could get the same kind of production from him, I would take it.
Yeah.
Who'd you go with?
I went with Zach LaVine, which I feel like, as a Bulls fan, I don't actually love Zach, but I've been playing him a lot in DFS. But really, I'm trying to attack the matchup here. So they're going against Washington, and the Washington are just like out of big men completely, because even Rui went down now. So Bertans, who's playing small forward for them in name only, is probably going to be their starting five right now. And so I figure that LaVine can probably drive in there fairly uncontested, and he likes to take those mid-range twos, but Washington already plays fast. If no one's hands in his face, or at least no one really threatening, I think there's a chance that one or two Chicago Bulls guards have a big game. I don't really know which one, so I went with Zach because he's the most ball dominant of the group.
Yeah, a couple guys to look out for that, kind of I had enough money to sway. Kyle Lowry, potentially going up against Detroit. He'd be going up against Derrick Rose. For the most part, Rose has been playing a lot of point for them, or a lot of minutes itself. So I felt like that would be a good matchup. And another guy who's kind of like found the youth a little bit here lately, Chris Paul against Memphis, going up against Ja Morant. I feel like he could definitely dominate him in terms of like, feel like he has more strength. And so kind of in general, I feel like he could back him down, or really with his experience, really kind of take advantage of the rookie. So
I also look,
and both those guys were within 300.
Yeah, I also looked at Jalen Brunson down at 6,000. You mentioned with Luka out, his minutes have jumped so much. He played 34 minutes and 32 minutes over the last couple of games. Got 37, 38 fantasy points, which isn't lighting the world on fire, but at 6,000, that's still 6 times value. But Boston has a good defense, so I wasn't like, I wasn't against it, but he's one of those guys for like, if I was entering multiple lineups, I think I would want to work him in there, but he didn't end up making it into my lineup. All right, who you got at the 2?
At the 2, I went with a guy who's kind of got a hot hand lately, Bruce Brown Jr. from Detroit against Toronto. Just kind of the last couple games, looking at him, he's gotten 39 and 48 fantasy points, so at 5,600. I felt like Bobby Bird, they're actually giving him starter minutes with Reggie Jackson being out. I just felt like right there against Toronto, giving up the 11th most points.
Yeah, to the opposing guard.
To the point guard, shooting guard category. So I felt it was kind of safe mode, especially he's kind of on a hot streak. So potential of Drummond coming back, which I feel like could potentially kind of hurt him a little bit in terms of he probably won't get as much shots up as he's been getting. But even if he doesn't, he's been really consistent with his shots. It looks like he's getting to the free throw line the last 2 games. He had 6 and 8 free throw attempts the last 2 games. And then he was 5 for 10 and 6 for 9 with field goal attempts. So it's not like he's, needing a bunch of points to kind of get you that value, because he's getting you stats across the board. So
Yeah, I like that pick. For my shooting guard, I went with the opposite Boston guard. I went with Jaylen Brown. Kind of going along the same lines of with Luka out, there's going to be 1 or 2 of these guys. I'm not sure who's going to be playing, but last time he played against Dallas, he was able to get 45 fantasy points. And at 6,700, I would love it if he was able to get 45 again. So I was just going after it. Last time they played, I didn't know, I'm not sure if you know offhand, but because there's Dallas. When they played before, do you know if Kemba was in that game?
Yes. Okay. November 11th.
Yeah. The last game, Kemba was also playing. He still got 38 minutes, so it's not like an injury type thing where like where he got extra minutes bumped up for that.
Yeah.
He played 41 minutes. So yeah, I just kind of plugged in Jaylen Brown. The price was right.
So at the 3, tonight, he's been a constant guy in my lineups. Carmelo Anthony. I don't know who this Anthony is. Like, did he find the fountain of youth or something? Because the way he's playing is completely not like he had played 2 or 3 years prior. He's getting you points. He's actually getting rebounds too. The last 2 games, he's averaged 8.5 rebounds. He's getting some steals. That's really the big part. If you look at his last 5 games, he's had about 2.5 steals a game. And then blocks. The last 3 games, he's averaged 2 blocks a game. Not that I expect that trend's going to continue, but he's also a guy that's going to be getting you 3-pointers, which gets you the extra value as well. So the last 2 games, he's gotten 46 and 40.8 points. Yes, against Phoenix. Yes, against Denver. But this is Golden State. So Golden State is really going to let you shoot the ball. And so I'm hoping for a 48 point game from him. And at 6,300, I think that's really good value.
And I have nothing to add because I also have Carmelo Anthony in that slot.
It's so crazy. Like, I think if every GM had the ability to see what Melo how he actually would have played, like how he's playing, I feel like they would have signed him easily for the contract that he got.
Yeah, maybe, but I mean, Houston took that shot last year and it completely destroyed them to the point that they had to rush him off. They like sent him home and they're like, "Don't come back." And the moment we can trade you, you're off the team. So
yeah, and maybe he's bought into the whole team aspect and not trying to do everything himself. Maybe that's changed his game, but I'm loving the fantasy.
Yeah. All right, who you got at the 4?
At the 4, I hope he doesn't burn me. He's been tough to watch, but I went with kind of a low price. Derek Favors. He played on Sunday. He only got 15.8 points, and he played the game prior. He's been on a minutes restriction, so I'm hoping the restrictions continue to go up in my favor. The first game, he only played 15 minutes and got 18 fantasy points. And then this game against Minnesota, which potentially no Karl Anthony Towns with a knee bang. He's listed as questionable. So then he's going to go up against Gordy Jang, who's pretty solid defensively, but he's slow-footed. And so I think if he can get me 25 minutes, I think he can get back to the 30-point fantasy point range that he was kind of doing right before he kind of left the team for personal reasons. So that's kind of who I went with at the 4. How about you?
With the 4, I went with Davis Bertans. So I mentioned before, he's shooting the 3. Again, he's just one of the guys that keep attacking in DraftKings anyway. But now, especially where it sounds like he's probably going to be the starting center because they just have no bigs at all. I mean, he's already been playing like 35 minutes a game or whatever, so it can't go up that much, but it could, I could get those extra few minutes, get out to 38, 40 minutes, and then there's just the extra chance. I didn't have him, like 3 games ago when he went, let me actually get the right number. He went 8 of 12 from 3-point range against Charlotte. He was just like ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that night he had 50 fantasy points, and that was at $6,300 salary. So his salary's only up to $6,500. He's had some down games since then, but he's going to take those. Out of the last 10 games, the lowest attempt I see is 5 3-pointers taken, or a couple of games of 6. Otherwise, we've got 12, 13 attempts, and if you catch that right night, I just feel like it's gold when they're shooting up that many because you just get the extra points and stuff.
Yeah, he was the guy from San Antonio, and I feel like San Antonio always has a big that just can shoot 3. That's from overseas, and I think we play. I don't know if the thing aired, but when Bertans played against San Antonio, we were big on it, and he hit that night. Now he's actually getting starting minutes. I like that value. I was sad to see Rui go, but you got to be able to know kind of who to switch to when there is that injury. So,
all right, who you got holding down the middle?
Well, holding down the middle is I'm hoping he's going to have a great game because without having Luka out, we really need him to kind of keep what he's been doing the last 2 games for Dallas. I've got Kristaps Porzingis. Just kind of looking at him since Luka went down, he had a 51-point fantasy night against Miami, and then here on, I believe it was Monday, the 16th, 53.5 points. He's actually rebounding the ball the last 2 games, so he's had a double in both of them, and you can usually count on him to get a couple blocks. He might have a game where he has 0, but you can at least count on him usually for 1 block. Mm-hmm. And he's just one of those bigs that can step behind the 3-point line. I think last game he had 2 3-pointers from the logo. So, it's just kind of one of those things where nothing is out of range for him. And they're really going to rely on him, with Luka being out these next 2 games. So at that point, that's who I went with, was Kristaps at the 5.
You said those next 2 games. You mean next 2 weeks?
Yes, next 2 weeks.
I was like, did you hear something exciting that I hadn't heard? Because, I mean, the 2 weeks is exciting as it is because it looked pretty bad. So hopefully that estimate's correct.
Yeah, I cringed when I saw it. A little multiple tears came.
At the 5, I did Jonas Valanciunas. I always call him JV, so I had to pause for a second to remember how to say that out loud. I just felt like there's been a couple games where, it's going between Jaren Jackson Jr. and JV. And I felt like with the matchup on Steven Adams that they might just go with kind of the more bigger bruiser type. Not that Jackson can't do that, but he's a little bit more of a shot blocking, exciting timing high flyer rather than just kind of trying to box guys out.
Yeah.
And so I felt like his possibility, because JV's minutes will vary. Like he'll get 25, 29 minutes and he'll get down to 19. And so I think that kind of creates a situation where for DraftKings, the price comes down here to 6,300 and I like it. And then after he gets a bunch of minutes, it jumps up to like 7,300 and I have no interest. So I was hoping to get one of those where the price is down, but the minutes are up, and we'll see. This is kind of one of my gamble rules. What I looked at here is I wanted to play Karl Anthony Towns, but he's listed as questionable, and I would have to keep an eye on it to make that change anyway, but especially at 10K at questionable, it felt like I was really going to have to scramble to spend the money wisely if I didn't have him. And it was hard. Like I wanted Melo, I wanted Bertans, I wanted Zach LaVine. Well, Zach LaVine's 8, but like Melo, Bertans, these guys are all like in the 6,000 range, and one 10,000 guy kind of messed that up. I couldn't afford these middle price guys, and this lineup ended up fairly balanced, and just 10,000 kind of switched it all into stars and scrubs. So I was interested in Cat for the matchup, but if it gets close after shoot around tomorrow, I might throw in a second lineup with him, which means I'd kind of have to change everything just because of pricing.
Anytime you try to go for that big fish, it's always having to go slim on 1 or 2 picks, and you really have to find those 1 or 2 picks that are in the about 3 to low 4,000 range. That'll get you about 24 to 28 points.
Yeah. All right, now we're into some of the flexes. Who are you flexing for your guard?
So for my guard flex, our theme really all year. Who do you attack? The Portland forwards. So at guard position, he's got guard eligibility, point guard, small forward. So Draymond Green. I think once Russell came back, he kind of slid back down a little bit to more of the small forward spot. They're playing him still. They could be still playing him a shooting guard some, but 2 games ago he got 56 fantasy points, and that's the problem with Dre is like he's gonna go off on one night and then really kind of last game he only had 15.5 points. Now, albeit that was a blowout, 79 to 100, so maybe he wasn't really playing that much after halftime, or really doesn't look like he played really at all. I mean, only 7 points and 2 rebounds.
I mean, he played 20. He played 26 minutes. He played half the game. It was just bad. It was ugly basketball. This doesn't affect Draymond, but Sacramento had 22 turnovers and still won the game It's like absurd.
Yeah. My goal here is, do I think he's going to get a 56 banger? No. But I think he could still get in the 40s. You got to attack Portland's forwards. So I think he could easily get me in the 40 range. At 5,800, that's pretty good value right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I kind of overlooked it. I've been picking Draymond a lot in DraftKings. I just didn't even think about him tonight. I don't know why.
Yeah, and that's the problem is I've picked him on nights that he's had down, and then he goes off the very next game.
Yeah.
So, not that I'm trying to jinx myself or anything, but everyone goes off against Portland. So, why can't he? With me picking.
You just keep going. You're going to hit it. Somebody's got a lotto. It might as well be you.
Yeah.
So I went a little risky here for my guard spot. I went with Ish Smith from Washington. It's been kind of sneaky good lately, but Isaiah Thomas has been out, and Isaiah Thomas can be back. I don't know if they're playing tonight, but I was just kind of going for the back and forth game with the Bulls. A lot of my guys have been centered on that Washington versus Chicago matchup, where I was looking at Minnesota, New Orleans, kind of going through the normal things. And so Ish Smith had the price was right at 5,200. I got down. I don't always build my lineup like in order the way we're discussing them and going through them, but tonight I happened to. I filled all 5 of my spots. And I was just working my way through, and I got to the last 2 spots, and I had about 10 grand. So I had to look for those 5,000 range, give or take a little bit. And out of who was available for me, Ish Smith was able to play. What do you have for your forward?
So for my utility or my flex forward, this was my value pick, Maxi Kleber.
Yep.
Just kind of really hoping to hit low or draft low and kind of hit high with it. 2 games ago, he had 28 fantasy points. Last game against Milwaukee, he had 21. He's played almost 30 minutes a game. So the last 2 games that Luka's been out, Maxi has been playing more as well. He's normally an 18 to 20 minute guy range, but it looks like Carlisle has played him with a little bit more minutes with Luka being out. So with that, I'm hoping that really if he can get me about 25 points, then I'm hitting my value with him. And I think he can easily hit that against Boston. It's going to be a slow game, and my only concern is that they're playing down with Boston. But, I think this was a low value, high reward potential with only needing, like I said, only between like 24 and 25 points to kind of hit value for him.
Yeah. My forward option is going to sound a little like old news because I keep attacking Washington versus Chicago, but I went with Lauri Markkanen. He's been playing a bit better lately, and again, just Washington's so decimated with forwards right now. He's been fluctuating a bit, not quite to the Draymond Green level that we've been seeing, but he had Lauri had 24 fantasy points last game, but he had 45 before that. Then he was down to 20. Then he was 32 before that. So at 5,900, I really need it to be closer to 30. But with the upside of getting past that against Washington, it's just one of the fastest paced teams that just doesn't seem to be able to play defense now because they're injured, and they seemed allergic to defense before that. So they're just trying to run it off the court. So I'm just, I don't think he'll have an okay game. I think he'll either have a poor game because he's just like jacking up shots and missing at the pace, or have a really good game. And now that I said that, I'll be wrong, and I'll have a totally mediocre middle of the road game. But
the last spot, my utility, I went with a guy that's kind of really been consistent the last couple games, actually the last 4 games. Kind of looking at it, he's been almost 40 plus fantasy points in each of them, and that's Brandon Ingram going up against Minnesota. Potentially no Karl Anthony Towns, so I feel like in general I'm not concerned about him kind of getting like not being able to take it to the hole. I think Gorey is still good, and he's a shot blocking machine when he plays, but I think I'm still not concerned about it, especially going up against it. And he's played really well against Orlando, Philly, Milwaukee, and Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of, he's getting you about. He's not having to get 30 points every game just to get you the 40 points, because he's another guy that will fill up the stats. He'll get you some assists, some rebounds, potential. He's not really a big steals guy. He's not going to get you any blocks, but from the standpoint, he's shooting threes too. So you get those extra bonuses in DraftKings. So I went with Brandon Ingram's $8,000. He's going to have to get me about 48 points, which unfortunately the last 4 games he hasn't. But if when you have an $8,000 guy, he needs to be 40 or more points.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the potential is there.
Yeah. No, I like it. I mean, there's the little things if you're just looking at the game from a distance where it's just like, okay, they're on the second night of a back-to-back and they're on the road. But sometimes I think we overshadow. Like, I think it feels a little bit to me like, this is betting in a way, but that feels to me like more like old school betting mentality when people are like trying to do points and set the spread. So then they're like, okay, second night of the back-to-back. And these things matter. They affect play for sure. But unless we're talking about someone who's like getting rested, I don't worry as much about the back-to-back situation.
Yeah.
But I do think that sometimes those things do come in and affect salaries, which sometimes gives you an option to kind of sneak an extra player in there where you couldn't. So I went with your once upon a time hometown boy and back again, Seth Curry. Just kind of hoping for the extra minutes with Luka out, like we talked about. And he's got him the last couple of games, 19, 26, 34 minutes. Some of his higher scoring effort. Again, his boom bust potential, but at 4,700, everyone I'm going to be taking is looking a little bit like boom bust. But, he had 38 fantasy points, then before that 9, and then before that 50. So if I can get one of those good games, then it's great. Boston's got a good defense, so it might not work, but they might. Then the flip side of that argument, Boston has good defense, so they might need the extra scoring punch from Seth. Now, if they're trying to put Seth on Kemba for guarding, I don't think it's going to work out too well. But you never know. As long as it's not in the fourth quarter, maybe they won't be completely attacking him. I mean, Seth was able to hold his own in the playoffs last year. Like we saw him play his brother and play some pretty solid defense. But Kemba's build and Steph Curry's build is not the same. I have a feeling Kemba can overpower Seth pretty well.
Yeah, and just kind of looking at the utility, if I was to kind of, all of a sudden start to question, okay, is Brandon Ingram the right choice? There's a couple flex moves that I can move to. I looked at Andrew Wiggins potentially if Karl-Anthony Towns is ruled out. I think Wiggins is a good slot in there. He's only 7,600. He's going to be ball handling more. And last 2 games he's gotten about 44 and 41. So less value that you're having to spend on him. And I can maybe use some of that money towards, another slot as well. Or another guy that I was looking at was I was looking at Zach LaVine, who you had, who you took earlier. Again, going up against Washington. One guy I was avoiding was Bam. I just don't want to play center against Joel Embiid. And last time Bam played against Embiid, he only got like 18 fantasy points. So it's like, avoid.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there anyone else that kind of stood out for me? With Karl-Anthony Towns being questionable, I looked and I was like, oh, maybe I can go cheap with Bell or like Gorgie Jang. And even at the lower price, it's just like they still weren't clearing, they're getting 9 fantasy points on 3,000. I still want higher upside than that. And there's no, if I'm going down there, that means I'm probably playing a Stars and Scrubs lineup. I still need like some burst option in my opinion for that. Someone we didn't play who I feel like most nights we love and attack, and it's not like Cleveland's defense exists, or I was going to say lighting the world on fire, but it's not like it exists. We didn't talk about Devontae Graham, and I know when we've been recording other weeks we've looked at Graham. I could see him having a good game here. It's just nope. was gonna say, is his price a little down because he had a bad shooting night? But no, his price still went up, which that just must be them factoring in the Cleveland of the matchup, because he only shot 16% in his last game against Indiana. So I was hoping that his price is a little lower, but he's not.
And there's some good values out there. Vucevic potentially against Denver. He's only $7,000. Kevin Love's only 6,800 against Charlotte. He's kind of like that Draymond Green. He'll have a good game. Charlotte's kind of guy who they've been playing a lot. PJ Washington is not able to play. He's out with a couple games with a fractured finger. So in his shooting hand, so he's out a couple games. I think Kevin Love is a potential there. And Derrick Rose, the only thing that scares me with Rose at 6,600 is the fact that I don't feel like anybody's shutting him down. Like, he's getting points and stuff like that, and he's getting assists. I think the only time you worry is when it's the fact that, like, Drummond's in there, or he's always an injury away where it's going to be a short game for him, And so, but at 66, that's pretty good value. Like, at 6,600, and the last 3 games he's gotten 43 points. So,
yeah, I actually think from the eye test, I don't know if the stats match up, but from the eye test, I think it actually works best for him when Drummond is in the game, because they run the pick and roll really well. So with Blake Griffin out, I like the pick. I think there's a good chance for them needing the extra facilitator.
Drummond hasn't played the last 2 games, and that's where he got the 43 fantasy points, because Drummond had something with his eye. Avocado in the eye, and he's allergic to avocado, which I didn't even think that was a thing, but he had allergic reaction to avocado. So, and that hurt me because I have him in weekly lineup. So,
right. Well, I just mean it's going to be compounded because Blake Griffin just went down with the knee injury, so they, with how much Blake Griffin does the passing and stuff, they're really needing an extra facilitator on the team. So even if Drummond were back, there's still like the need for an extra ball handler. And at the start of the year, when it was Drummond and Rose and Blake was out for the first couple weeks or whatever, first 10 games, they were really doing well, because then it was just like a different offense of running the full on, like, just pick and roll setup when you come in for the second unit. Cool. Well, thanks for doing it. Good luck to you in your matchups tomorrow.
Yeah, good luck to you.
Thanks, and good.
And again, I mean, just watch out for those last minute, questionables. Sometimes they bite you, where all we can say is they're questionable right now.
Right.
Karl Anthony Towns ends up playing next, or he doesn't play, and now you can make a switch to. And I think like Tatum he's questionable with a sinus infection. So, they project him not to miss the game, but you never know.
Zach LaVine's questionable, but he hasn't missed a game yet. So it's the same type of thing.
Yep. You just have to be ready to kind of maneuver right before the lineups lock. So.
Yep, that's a good point, especially because we record this the night before. So for anyone who's watching this potentially closer to games, you may know more than we know now when we're trying to break down the slate. But it gets time to get the word out for people. All right. Good luck, everyone. Thanks for listening.